All right, so welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for our Clean Energy Opportunity Spotlight series. The focus of this month is on residential energy assessments. We have a lovely guest here with us from the Energy Programs Office. A couple of caveats. This is being recorded, so if you don't want to have yourself recorded, just make sure to have your camera off. You can feel free to use the chat if you have questions. A little bit about the Spotlight series. Each month we feature a different program, some of which are through the Energy Programs Office. Sometimes we bring in folks from other agencies dealing with any kind of clean energy or energy efficiency topic. And we'll turn it over to Heather. Again, it's being recorded, and also we are not able to use AI. So just note that you can't use AI note taking. So Heather, take it away.
Hello. I'm enjoying the fact that it's suddenly almost fall, but I feel like it's going to be false fall right now. And we're going to get 80 degrees again. So looking not forward to that. I'm going to get started here on energy savings for your home. Just one second while I switch over so I can see my notes. Hopefully it doesn't mess up my slides. There we go. Yay. All right. So first, I'm going to discuss some, things about how to make energy efficiency work for your home. So this is our little agenda here. One of the things in the energy world we like to say is you can't manage what you don't measure. I mean, that goes for other things too. And in energy for your home, that definitely is the truth. Energy assessments are a critical piece to managing your home's energy use and helping you get your utility bills under control. So what I'm going to talk about is some general energy facts about homes in Pennsylvania, sort of to give you a little bit of perspective. Then I'm going to talk about, whoops, on the next slide yet. There we go. Some overall things that renters and homeowners can possibly do to lower your bills. First, on your own, doing your own assessment, basically, and then sprinkle in some information that can help you look at your potential energy savings sort of through the right lens, those myth busters that are out there, and ultimately touch on some technical and financial tools that might be able to help you save energy and save money and help you achieve those goals that you have. So some residential energy opportunities, whether you rent or own the space you live in, we all use energy. So as you're assessing your energy use, we want to make sure you start with your data to help prioritize actions you can take. And these are some basic, these two little graphs here show some information about energy opportunities in homes, specifically in Pennsylvania. Most folks have heard those advertisements about how your windows are going to save you 30% on your energy bills. That's one of those myths we're going to talk a little bit more about. But really, it's a combination of factors. It is the right equipment, the right building components, the right controls, and the right behavior. So to put some perspective on things and how things have changed, this is a graph of how energy usage consumption done through the Residential Energy Consumption Survey, which is the EIA. That's what EIA stands for on here. That is the Energy Information Administration. They run this survey periodically. The two most recent surveys were in 2009 and 2020. And you can see how things have changed in Pennsylvania over the course of just the 11 years between these two studies. Our percentage of energy bills that comes from air conditioning has increased to almost a quarter of our bill. And then they've also carved out refrigeration here, just because that is one of the things that a lot of folks, everybody has a refrigerator, I hope, and refrigeration does use a lot of energy in our homes. So things that are plugged in, it tends to be the biggest one, and that is why they carved that out for this survey. And this really shows us where we have the most opportunity to impact our energy consumption and our costs, which is that 75% that exists today of heating and air conditioning in our homes. And I do like to point out that a little story of a person who had been running systems at a school district that one of my coworkers had been working with. an individual had been setting the rules about the equipment that they had and how the system worked, and their replacement came in and started actually using the controls that the school district already had on their equipment and working with the people that occupied the space to make some behavioral changes. And ultimately, they ended up saving that school district over 30% in their energy usage without spending a penny. So if a school district can do that with some behavioral changes and using some things they already have in place, there might be some opportunities for you to do that in your own home. You know, mom and dad were not kidding when they said stop taking a 3-hour shower when some of you were teenagers. That has not changed. So one of the things that we like to point out is that energy codes were not standardized in Pennsylvania until 1999. So energy wasn't a consideration for the builder of your home unless the builder decided to be nice or they were ultimately the homeowner and wanted to specify things to be more efficient. So this means that you probably have some opportunities existing in the walls, in the attic, in the basement, in your house that you can do something to make your home more efficient. Way back when, in the 1800s, houses were a lot more compact, and you would have a central boiler or central fireplace that could distribute that heat from it through registers in the floor. Probably a lot of you have been to a home at some point that has that big open thing you walk over in the middle of the upstairs hallway. That is because that was designed to bring the heat upstairs in those older homes before we had different systems that we do now. And those homes were also designed to capture the cooler breezes. They were oriented to capture the winter sun. The walls were designed to keep out the heat and cold. Newer homes that were built prior to the energy code updates often don't have those features at all. So there is opportunity there too. So the first thing that you can do is establishing your baseline and figuring out how you can be more efficient in your home, warm in the winter, cooler in the summer, hopefully more money in your pocket. And so to establish a baseline, you want to grab your utility bill. So I know someone said they were from PECO on the phone here. PECO has a handy sample bill on their website that I grabbed for our little lesson today. And on that bill, you see there's a light green and a light blue color because PECO does both electric and gas. That is the supplier for your energy. And then the delivery is that darker section of that bill. And you can impact both of those pieces because they're both based on your energy usage. The lighter color is just your usage. The darker color includes the part where the utility is bringing the power to your home, whether it be gas or electric. That customer charge is so that they can maintain the power lines, they can maintain the poles out there, they can show up when lightning hits the tree at the neighbors, and they can put that power line back up. So that customer charge can't be changed, but the whole graph could potentially be made smaller. And there is a way to switch your power supplier if you want to. It's called PA Power Switch. It's online. And regardless of what you choose to do, one of the things I also like to point out to folks is when you're taking a look at how can I reduce this bill, sometimes being able to improve the comfort of a space in your home is just as important as reducing your energy usage. Someone might have added on a kitchen or a family room on your home at some point, and it's really cold all the time in the winter and really hot all the time in the summer, and you're not using that room basically 4 months out of the year. And so you have to make that decision. Do I really want to use that room more often and put some energy savings things in place that have a longer payback than something that's going to be a quick win? Just because then you get to use that square footage in your home another quarter of the year. So when you are looking at opportunities, I also like to point out, regardless of if you rent or own, you should also take a look at how do you actually heat your home and cool your home. Most people use electric for their air conditioning just because that's typically how it works. There are a few systems that are not, but the majority of homes are electric for air conditioning. But for heating, you may have oil or natural gas, you may have electric, you may have propane. And if you don't know that, then you need to figure that out pretty quick if you're going to be making substantive changes in saving energy. Also, if you rent, it might not be a bad idea to figure that out too, just because then that way you have an idea of what is going on with your bill. You might pay it as part of your monthly rent and they just charge you some number in there. Hopefully they're charging you the number that's your actual energy usage, but there might be ways to find that out from your landlord. And then, do you know what the difference is between a furnace and a boiler or a heat pump and which one you have? If you've got gas or oil or propane that you're using for heating, it's probably what they call a hydronic heating system, which is hot water running through radiators, whether they be baseboard radiators or the old-fashioned, big heavy iron ones that sit under an old window. And that means that there are different maintenance things you need to do for that to make it as efficient as possible than a furnace, which would be forced hot air through registers. So you might have a heat pump or a furnace that is blowing hot air through registers, and knowing which one you have helps you identify which actions you can take to reduce your energy footprint. So step one, you should probably take a look at how can you establish, like, what is it of my bill is actually my heating and my air conditioning. And this example, most utility bills these days, I haven't seen everybody's from across the state, so I apologize if somebody's utility bill is coming without a graph like this, but you can make your own graph, even if it's just with old-fashioned pen and paper, to figure out what are the things that your house has using energy-wise when it's not air conditioning or heating. So clearly the spike here on this bill is in July, August, September, and October. That is probably the air conditioning in this home. And then December through March is the heating in this home. The rest of those things, that red line, is what's happening in your home energy-wise when you're not heating and cooling. Coolest times comfortable times of the year when you might be opening up your windows because it's 70 outside and you don't need to use those things. That is going to be your television. That is going to be your refrigerator. That is going to be, all of the electronics you have plugged in, charging your phone, etc. That also includes your hot water in most cases, unless you're not using electric for hot water making. So when you look at this baseline number, one of the ways you can sort of figure out if you need to reduce things or what might be also big energy users from, at least from electric perspective in your home, is you can go shut off your air conditioner or your furnace, depending upon when you're doing your analysis here, and then have someone go stand out with the meter and then start shutting stuff off, right? Turn off your refrigerator, make sure nothing else is running, and figure out what is causing that baseline to be what it is, because it'll give you a good idea of what you can do to make changes in your home. The other thing we recommend is taking a look over time. And this bill here does a great example of this. In March on this bill, you can see that the average daily temperature was 43 for the March of 2017 in their example. But the year before it was 39. And yet this customer was using more energy, more electric in the current year. Why is that? So maybe they had a big party in March. Maybe they hosted spring break for all of their college children and their friends. But what else did they do differently? And it's always a good idea to take a look over the course of multiple years to figure out, has your energy usage gone up? If it has, you might want to be taking a look at what it is that's going on there. Also, sometimes there'll be just a single month spike in someone's bill for air conditioning, for example. And if you take a look at how much you're paying in, May and June and November compared to how much you're paying that 1 month of spike, the payback for your air conditioner to be more efficient might turn out to not be worth the money if your air conditioner is in decent condition and still working. On the other hand, if it's multiple months in a row, then maybe it is worth it to take a look at when you replace it, how much more efficient can we go? So now that you've established your baseline, the next thing you want to focus on is how can you save energy and money to keep that conditioned air, whether it be warm or cold, in the spaces you occupy, since most people, 75% of their energy usage is in heating and air conditioning. And you need to decide if you can do that yourself or if you need to hire somebody else. There is a preponderance on your handy phone these days of folks out there showing you how to do a lot of DIY energy efficiency things that you can do yourself. And if you're that handy person, then go for it. If you're not the handy person, we'll talk a little bit later about having somebody come in and do an audit for you, and how they can help direct you to do some of these things yourself or hire somebody to do some of the projects. And they'll be able to give you an idea of which is the thing that's going to save you the most money. There are full-blown audit tools online with checklists and so forth. You might want to check your local utility to see if they happen to offer one. If they don't, then check with the neighboring utility to see maybe they have one. Sometimes they require you to have an account with them to get results. But we're going to start with talking about how you might be able to do this yourself without hiring somebody and steps you can take from there. So, step one, seal and insulate. Sealing. Two things that all residents can do is you can do this mini audit yourself, and you can potentially put some insulation in place and do some air sealing, because you're not hot or cold in your house because of a bad air conditioner or a bad heater. You're probably hot and cold in your house because there's air movement and there's thermal image issues where the heat is leaving. Water and air follow the path of least resistance, and temperature is going to move towards equilibrium, which is clearly not what we want in July when it's 97 degrees outside, or in January when it's 7 degrees outside. So that air that you've taken and spent your money on to make warm in January is trying to find a way out, and it's going to. So I recommend grabbing yourself a flashlight, some incense or a candle, an instant read thermometer, a notebook, and preferably a partner, and then start looking for priority areas. It's always best to do this on a windy day. You walk around with the incense stick and or a candle, stay away from your curtains, and hold it around your window edges to look for air leaks. Hold it around your door to see if, is there air just sort of blowing in around your door? Check the door to your basement and attic, like the attic hatch. That shower or tub panel that's in that closet in the guest room or in the hallway where the pipes come up and the plumber can get to them behind your shower. If your basement is not heated or cooled, that is a big area where that cold air and hot air is sneaking around and coming into the space you don't want it to be, which is where you're trying to live. So make yourself a diagram of your home and note places that have a breeze and the places where you can see daylight. They also sell for less than $40 these fun thermal cameras. Not less than $30. Less than $30, you can get a temperature gun with a little laser pointer on it that your cat will love. And you can point that at the wall. You can point that at the edges of your window. It will help you identify, is there a temperature difference between spot A and spot B. And they're about $40 or less from the local hardware or big box store or, your favorite online shopping center. And that will help you step up your mini audit. But if you don't think you're going to have use for it, like laser pointer with your cat, then I don't recommend necessarily running out and spending the money. But one thing I do recommend is do not try to use an app on your phone, because your phone doesn't have a thermometer in it. So, why you want to find these air gaps is because of this. How do I make that work? It's not load. There we go. That hole right there is to scale. So this is the size of a door, 3 foot by 7 foot, 6 inches, and a 1/4 inch gap the whole way around that door is the equivalent of that 6 by 5 inch hole in your wall. And you want to seal that up because you might as well just let your cat crawl out of the hole. And weather stripping that's compressed or flattened can easily be replaced whether you rent or whether you own. Run over to the store, the hardware store, ask the person there if you don't know what type you really need. Make sure before you do something permanent, you check with your landlord. If you're a renter, I'm not sure that the landlord's really going to care if you replace weather stripping around your door. And then around the frame of the door or around the frame of your window, there should be caulk the whole way around that to seal those air gaps. And it does shrink and crack over time. So you might want to consider redoing it, both inside and out. Step one, remove the old stuff. And step two, put it in. And then this is one of those things that if you're going to recalk your windows or whatever, there are lots of good videos online from reliable places like This Old House or Mike Holmes or whatever. And even check with the hardware store person to find out what you need. And if you have windows and you're not really ready to replace a window that, it's got some issues and it's got some issues, there are those window film kits that you double sticky tape the whole way around the window and then you blow a hairdryer on it to shrink wrap it kind of thing. They do work, amazingly enough. The double-sided tape will sometimes peel your paint, so just be careful. But if nothing else, they're a great investment to make it so you can sit near that window when it is especially cold in the wintertime. And then for homeowners, there are big energy wasting sneaky leaks, and that's like that tub panel that I mentioned. Another thing that happens is your walls sometimes, the conditioned air, especially if you have a basement that you're using that's part of it's finished and part of it's not, and you're going ahead and conditioning your basement space for the family room or whatever, or for that matter, if you're heating it because you've got radiator pipes running through your basement, you are potentially losing a lot of that up or down through your walls. So one of the things we suggest, and I'll go back to the slide that has it on there, is this image shows taking styrofoam board insulation. There's different kinds of it. There's different brands of it. Read the instructions. Putting it in between all of the joists where the air goes up and down from your attic to your basement. Again, another thing you can check with that incense stick or a candle and see if that's actually happening. It's also a great mouse runway to seal up so that you're not having mice go from one to the other. And spray foam is one of those things that is a great tool if used correctly. So we recommend reading the label and using it the right way, but there are different manufacturers of it. The sample in this particular image is called Firestop Safe, but a lot of the spray foams these days are rated for use for fire safety, and there are low expansion, high expansion, different versions. You don't want to use the high expansion inside a wall cavity, for example, because it might pop your wall off. And it is your friend when used correctly. Like I said, make sure that you read the instructions. And when it says wear safety goggles, they're not kidding. And wear gloves, have old clothes that you're going to wear. Consider a bandana or hat. I've had to cut spray foam out of my husband's hair more than once because he wasn't wearing a bandana. Have rags handy to wipe it off as quickly as possible if it ends up dripping someplace it's not supposed to be. But it's definitely a great way to seal up those little holes, for example, under your kitchen sink. Also might help keep the mice from coming up from the basement, in behind the tub panel, and around other things that where there's penetrations from your garage to your home and so forth. Some things that homeowners definitely can do that renters probably can't is if you have a fireplace, that fireplace is not making your home more energy efficient ever. It is a big hole that just takes your heat in the wintertime right up through to the rest of the world, because most of the times the damper is just a really heavy metal plate that is put in place, and there's no insulation in there. So if you have a fireplace and you don't have a fireplace insert, you might want to consider getting one, because that also uses fresh air to combust your firewood, rather than bringing the air in from the rest of your house and then sucking it out your chimney. And you can also get kits that go up in that space when you're not using the fireplace. Just make sure you have a way to know not to light the fire before you take that rigid insulation board kit thing out of there, because you don't want to put that on fire. Some of them come with a special material like this shiny material here that's a little fireproof, and you'll end up with the smoke in your room before you realize it's there, but take it out ahead of time. And if you're also a homeowner, and you can replace windows and you're not really ready to replace windows, check for the sneaky leak that is the window that has lost its air seal. So if you see condensation between the double or triple panes in your windows, that's actually a place that air is flowing and you just don't realize it. It is the equivalent of a single pane window if you have a broken seal on your double pane or triple pane window. So you're going to want to look at replacing that window if possible as a homeowner. So that is oftentimes a sneaky thing that people don't realize is actually a problem for them as a homeowner. I'm going to talk briefly about insulation. Proper air exchanges are necessary when you're sealing up your home. So we do recommend that you check for proper ventilation, which a professional that would do an audit would be doing with you, hopefully with a blower door test. And if you have a gas or oil or propane boiler or furnace, you want to make sure that it has fresh air makeup. So seal up those main areas first. And you can keep your mold problems down with good ventilation in your bathroom, which every time you're showering or if someone's in there, they should really have that fan on to pull that moisture out. Hopefully it's not going up into your attic like this picture. That vent is hopefully running up onto the roof. But when you're doing insulation, you want to identify your plane of occupancy. What that means is that space where you are actually occupying the space. So if you're not using your attic for anything but storage of your Christmas decorations or whatever, then you can put insulation up in that attic space. Keeping in mind things such as light fixtures that might penetrate up into that space may not be appropriate to touch insulation. The wiring you have up there may not be appropriate to touch insulation. So one of the things, and you might want storage space. So you can see in this photo here, this is an attic space that has insulation behind a little dam so that you can have someone access the attic hatch. You can store your decorations for the holidays up there. And this was done by a professional that, made sure that they knew where certain things were. But you can mark on your rafters when you put this type of insulation in, like where something might be, so that you can go find it when something needs rewired. You could build little smaller versions of this wall around it if you're a very handy person. But if you're not using the space, don't insulate the ceiling of that attic, insulate the floor. Same thing with like your basement. If part of your basement's conditioned and part of your basement is not, the part that's not, the insulation needs to go on the ceiling of the part that's not. If you have a garage adjacent to your house that connects together and the garage isn't insulated, make sure the ceiling of the garage is insulated, make sure the wall between the house and the garage are insulated. Because those are things that you want to be looking for. And just touch on this for 2 seconds. It is recommended that in your attic you have an R value of 49, which seems like a lot for some people, but it is what is recommended and is going to give you the best insulation. Just a reminder, wood's R value is like 9. So assuming that doing that R21 thing is great. It's R21 every place that insulation is, but it's not R21 where you have those attic joists because it's wood. And this is a lot of times something that's overlooked. This was an energy audit that one of my coworkers had done. So he gave me these pictures of what was recommended to him. That is his attic hatch. And clearly it's cold. It is very cold. His audit was done in the wintertime. And so it was strongly recommended that he get himself an attic hatch, which is this is an example of one you can either build it yourself or you can buy a kit. It really will help make a difference in eliminating air and heat being lost to your attic. So I'm going to skip over this for the most part, but obviously this picture here, this ductwork here has insulation on it, and most people are not going to go up to their attic or climb around and put insulation on their ductwork. But what you do want to do is check if you do have ductwork in your house that isn't insulated. It may be insulated on the inside, especially an older home. But if you see gaps, or if you want to get that incense stick out there and look for smoke again, go find all the gaps between the places where that ductwork meets. And if air is coming out of there, you're losing your heat or your air conditioning in your attic. And if you can get to it, you want to seal that not with duct tape, seems counterintuitive, but you want to seal that with mastic or foil tape. And so there's a couple different products. Check with the internet, check with the big box and or the local hardware store persons. They will help direct you to the right stuff. And you want to put that to seal those gaps where your ductwork might be just leaking. You can put insulation around these ducts in this attic. Other thing too is you notice that these particular ducts that are feeding the air conditioning system upstairs of wherever this is are hung and not cinched tightly. That's because the more you compress insulation, the less insulating it is. So there are a couple of websites out there. If you're really interested in this, we can send the links to you that talk about how to properly insulate things. So then quickly, I'm going to talk about plug load and controls. So as a renter or as a homeowner, you control often the things that are those base line items, your electronics, your appliances. If you haven't switched from incandescent lights to LEDs at this point, and you're not using your incandescent light to heat a room for some reason, you probably should go ahead and make that investment. When you replace your appliances, go ahead and look for the Energy Star label. See that they are, equipment that you are using as efficiently as possible. And if you have controls, those include things like a programmable thermostat. If you have one and aren't using it, you probably should start using it. If your landlord hasn't installed one for you, ask them if they will. If you have one in your home, that's great. Back in 2009, only 40% of households had one. And I'm kind of hoping that in the past 16 years, most of you have upgraded at this point to a programmable thermostat. If you haven't, make it happen. Start using the programs. And also from a behavior perspective, see if you can deal with it being just 1 degree warmer in summer and 1 degree cooler in winter, so that might actually make a difference in your energy bill. Vampire and ghost loads, as we call them. There are advanced power strips out there on the market. Technology's improved greatly. No longer are they just a glorified extension cord, but they come with timers and motion sensors and remotes and apps on your phone. And, we have in our house one of those power strips sitting by our television. We're the family that still has old-fashioned VCR. And a stereo system and speaker system, and with our game system, and all those things are using power when we're not using it. So we installed a power strip that we plugged everything except for obviously the cable box, because otherwise the DVR doesn't DVR things. And we plugged it into a little set of Christmas lights, basically, to light our room. And that way is a reminder for us to turn it off at bedtime. And it stays off until somebody's actually using the gaming system or watching the television, and that television's not continuously using power. We also discovered our printer apparently has some sort of weird always on aspect, as every time the power's gone out, thanks to the thunderstorms we had this summer, it just turns on when the power comes back on. So you might want to check for those things in your home. Because, they're using energy and adding to your base load, whether you know it or not. And so there are light timers and programmable timers for appliances. And, those are other options that you can potentially take advantage of to control not just television or whatever, but some other appliances that might be using energy, such as a dehumidifier or a humidifier that you have set in your house. And then for homeowners, but some of these things also work for renters, you need to maintain your heating and ventilation, air conditioning systems. Find your manual, find out whether or not you can find it online a lot of times these days if you don't still have it. Make sure that you bring in someone to check the burner tips in your furnace or your boiler. Make sure that if you have filters, you're actually changing those. Have your landlord change them as per the requirements. If they won't, sometimes they're worth the investment to go ahead, especially if you're paying the utility bill, to take those filters and change them. There's little filters in your window or wall air conditioner, or even if you have a mini split system, a lot of times they're vacuumable. Take them out and vacuum them. You'd be surprised how much stuff gets trapped in there in just a short time period. Uncover your radiators. If you've got a bunch of furniture pushed up against the radiators in your house, that means that the couch is warm, but it's not using the circulation in your space to actually get the heat everywhere. So pull things away from those radiators. If you have baseboard radiators or even the old-fashioned ones, you might want to double check to make sure that you don't have any leaks. And if you need to bleed the radiator because of water makeup or whatever, do that. If you don't know how, check online. Like I said, with the controls, take advantage of what other controls are out there. Make sure that you're using them. They're there in your system potentially, and they could be there for free for you to make an upgrade to your energy. There are rebates and there are tax credits that potentially are available. We'll talk about that in one more second here. But let's talk about hiring a professional to do an audit. You can hire a professional to do one of these blower door tests. My cat was very intrigued by this a number of years ago. And what this does is it checks to see whether or not you have the right number of air exchanges in your home, the air infiltration rate in your building. And if there's too many, clearly you're losing air conditioning or heating right through those places that I talked about. You can seal and caulk around, and the tub panel, potentially the attic hatch. It's a little magical flow meter that goes on this to help to figure that out. BPI and ResNet are programs that certify energy auditors. You don't have to hire somebody to do that has Building Performance Institute or Residential Energy Services Network certification. You can take advantage, which I'll talk about in a second, of utility programs. There are lots of them. But an energy audit, if you do it on your own and not through utility, runs about $250 to $1,000, depending upon the size of your home. It can be more, it can be less. And then after you get your report, you can hire somebody to do those sealing things we talked about, or you can do some of it yourself. Potentially, it will, help you understand things. You can always see if somebody will come back and redo the blower door test after the sealing has been done to make sure that you have the healthiest home. And one of the things that my coworkers in our radiation program would be very mad at me if I didn't point out is that you need to retest for radon after you've sealed your home. Exposure to radon gas is the second leading risk factor of lung cancer in the United States. And 40% of the homes tested in Pennsylvania have radon levels above the action guidelines. So this link that's in here, which will be available hopefully somewhere, and if not, we can put it in the chat, talks you through how to get your home tested for radon. It is unfortunately not a requirement. I know that a lot of people do get their home tested when they buy it, but you really should be retesting it about once every 5 years because you may have made changes to your home that have sealed things up in a way you didn't realize. If you got new windows in the last 5 years, if you've changed out your heating system or your air conditioning system, it can have some substantial changes to how things and air is flowing in your home. So please, please, please test your home for radon and retest it periodically. So this massive chart shows you all of our lovely electric utilities and the programs that they offer for energy audits and have some incentives in many cases to help you pay for those upgrades that you want and that have been identified in the audit. If you have an old refrigerator, you might be able to get a rebate for getting rid of the old one. I know that I believe Pico offers one of those. I live in Pico service territory. There's a bunch of opportunities here that you can take advantage of to have that audit done. If you don't want to hire somebody on your own, these are great programs. Like I said, my coworker had that one done and he was very happy with it. You can also have some of these done even if you rent. Just check with your landlord and the utility, depending upon who pays the bill. So briefly, for 2 seconds, there are energy things that you might not realize that you're doing out there that can help you reduce your energy footprint overall. Every time you use water that comes from your well or comes from your tap, if you're on public water, there is what they call embodied energy in that water. So having that teenager not take that 3-hour-long shower, even if they were taking a unheated shower, is still using energy. So if you're looking to overall reduce your energy footprint, things like that are great ways to start looking at what can I do to reduce my energy footprint. Buying local food, making sure that you're not using the leaf blower like my neighbor does all the time to get the leaves off of his sidewalk. He's perfectly capable of using a broom, but he does not. And so, that's just using energy in a way that, he could be more physically fit if he would just use his broom. And so there are other ways that you can help reduce your energy footprint. Weirdly enough, one of the things that people often forget is that energy that's used to rebuild after disaster, fire, flood, those types of things, that's a lot more energy because you have to replace things like walls and, equipment and so forth and so on. And so there's been studies that show that sprinkler systems in homes can actually reduce energy usage overall because they put out the fire before it spreads to the rest of your home. And then if you live near a creek or an area that's subject to flooding, there are opportunities out there to grade your property differently or install waterproofing at the lower levels to hopefully prevent damage to things in your home. So some quick myth busting from sales pitches. 30% of your energy usage caused by the windows in your home is actually what you're saving. It is in the fine print oftentimes. It is not 30% of your total energy bill that you will be saving. So if you need to replace your windows, please do. But don't necessarily believe if it sounds too good to be true. It probably is. Changing one window in one room might make a big difference. If you have no insulation in your attic, that's possibly a significantly higher energy savings. When we had our energy audit done here at my house years ago, I was hoping to get new windows because we had really old windows. And unfortunately, they came through and they're like, it's not your windows that's the problem. It's the fact that you have no insulation in your attic here and here. And then you have a problem where your baseboard radiators, the heater pipe was running through our basement and we have stone walls, and that was just taking all the heat and none of it was coming upstairs. And then we had that air gap that ran between our basement and our attic. And so all of that heated air, if it didn't go into the stone in our basement, was just running up into the attic and out of the house. So we did air sealing to our home and added insulation instead of getting new windows. If you see those ads for free solar from the governor, no, that's not a program. We'd love it all to be, but it's not. There are some tax credits for right now. We're not really sure what the status of those will be. Check with the IRS, check with your tax preparer. They theoretically look like they're going away at the end of this year. So if you were considering some sort of energy changes this year, you might want to go ahead and pull the trigger and do it. The other thing too here is that there are rebates coming. Penn Energy Savers is the link to the website for low and moderate income homeowners. And then we have a Keep loan. And these two links will take you to their programs. And that's how you get in touch with me. And it is 15 minutes for questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my handy screen here. And do we have questions? Did somebody show up with one in the chat?
There are lots of questions in the chat.
Oh boy.
As I give you a moment to kind of look through, some of them are very specific, some you've kind of tackled already. But first, thank you so much for all of your insights. I think that energy efficiency does not get the hype it deserves. There's a lot of attention around renewable options, which are also really valuable. But the first step with any of it is to make sure that your home is efficient. And there's a lot of things, as you said, that we can do that are low expense strategies, whether we're renters or homeowners, that can be of benefit. So thank you so much, Heather. Um, let's see here. A couple of the questions. One thing to reiterate, there was a question about the tax credits. One of the things that we're planning to do with the Clean Energy Opportunity Spotlight series, we're going to add a couple additional spotlights that focus on some of those things. Our next scheduled one is on industrial energy assessments, but we know that there's a lot of questions around the clean energy tax credits, and we're going to bring in some experts that can help to clarify the nuances of it, whether you're an individual or a local municipality or nonprofit. Yeah, in terms of other questions, let's see here. Heather, are you looking through, or would it be helpful to read?
The Penn Energy Savers, unfortunately, so on that website, they have a whole list of what will qualify, when we're allowed to open the program, and the note that's in there in the comments about the fact that we're waiting for permission to launch the program is correct. We're waiting for DOE to tell us that we're able to do the program, which is the appliance rebates and some other, electric upgrades if necessary. Some of for the heat pumps, we're going to be doing contractor training for the contractors who would be installing heat pumps. So you're going to need to use a contractor that's been through our training program for that. And so we have to train the contractors before those will be available, unfortunately, I understand. But in there, on that main page, there's a whole check your eligibility, and then there's a customer FAQ section, and the FAQ section has a ton of information in it. So I just recommend go to pennenergysavers.com and take a look at that. Unfortunately, there is not, I see the one question about finding qualified contractors to do some of the work is problematic. I've heard that before. I experienced it myself. We won't discuss my plumber who installed our boiler without connecting it to the actual chimney flue that it needed to be connected to, which we discovered after problems. But anyway, we thought he was qualified. So we would love to have some sort of clearinghouse of trusted folks, but unfortunately right now we don't have any agency that does that. My recommendation is a couple of things to sort of get around that. One, ask for a copy of their insurance certificate. Like I had a friend who tripped over the discovery that the person that was going to be coming to put their new roof on their house was not actually in possession of roofer's insurance. It's completely different than contractor's insurance. So the asking for things like insurance certificates. Certain municipalities require a contractor to register with them. So some of the municipalities in the state may have a list that they can share with you. Some of them will not share them with you. I know that like the borough of Norristown requires contractors to register with them. They also require everybody that does any electrical work or plumbing work in your home be a certified electrician and certified plumber. So you can always ask for those types of things too. Is the person coming to work on my home a certified electrician, a certified plumber, or is it Heather that just happened to say that she's a plumber and she's not? So that's one of the ways that you can sort of address that. And I believe that some of the utilities may have contractors that they sort of recommend through their audits, but I don't want to speak to that for all of our utilities out there. But yeah, how eligibility parameters are identified is right on the Penn Energy Savers page, by the way. I see that question in here. someone is skeptical DOE is going to give us approval.
Yeah,
We have
just
no
to interject
magic
in
8
terms
ball.
of, of that, some of the question, lots of questions peppered in the chat. So we have already started getting contractors in the network for the home energy rebates program. There's two different programs within it, and one focused on appliances and one focused on general energy efficiency rebates. The one we're just waiting for permission to launch. We have our subcontractor on board. The training program, the training for residential energy contractors that complements those home energy rebates, that will likely be starting soon as well. But the best way to keep up if you have specific questions around the home energy rebates is to sign up for that list. So we have like a separate list for the home energy rebates program. Whenever it does get launched, we'll be featuring them on our Spotlight series. There were a couple specific questions, Heather, that are, about cellulose insulation and sealed vaulted ceilings. Any of those specific things you want to tackle? I realize we're coming close to our time here, but this is clearly a hot topic with lots of questions, very specific, and also about some programs.
Yeah, as far as the cellulose insulation question, sort of trying to figure out if your attic needs a touch up, the one thing to keep in mind is that, yes, more compressed insulation is going to, over time, insulation does settle. Some people actually are brave enough and go up to their attic and sort of fluff the insulation, because what's weird, the blown in stuff, because it's the actual air gaps between those things that create your insulation. And so foam board insulation, weirdly enough, depending upon the thickness of it, has a higher R value than a fiberglass bat. And it kind of seems weird because it's this small thing, but it's because there's tiny lots of them, little air pockets inside of that. And so depending upon how your insulation is in your attic space, if it doesn't go above the tops of the joists, you could just go up there and make sure you read the instructions to make sure it's able to be used in that kind of situation, and put down those big boards that you can buy at like Home Depot or Lowe's or wherever, on top of things, if your insulation doesn't go above your joists. If it does, and you don't know where all your wires are, you're probably not going to go up there and fluff it. But you could have someone like a contractor come out and give you a quote to see if it does need a touch up. If you have, $20-$30 to go spend on one of those thermal gun things, we have fun with the one here that we had actually from the office. We used to use it for work, and I brought it home to test something out. So it's still under my desk here. And you can see where there's places in my ceiling where it's colder and where it's hotter, just by pointing that at the ceiling when it's the right time of the year. And, the cold air is trying to make its way into my living space. That would be one way to check to see if there's still a good thermal blanket in your attic. As far as insulation and air sealing vaulted ceilings without ripping down your whole ceiling, I have a friend who they literally drilled small holes in the entire top of their exterior wall, did the blown in insulation into that air cavity between the exterior wall and the interior wall. I'm assuming somebody could do the same sort of thing with a vaulted ceiling, depending upon what the depth of, the drywall to the actual underdecking of a roof is. So I don't know the names of any of those contractors, don't know where you're located in Pennsylvania. So I don't even know anybody in my area. But there might be somebody out there that could just come and put small holes in instead of ripping the whole thing down for you. And that goes for people who, just want to insulate their walls. Talked about the tax. Let's see here. Someone recommended vacuuming the grill on your refrigerator. Yes, highly recommended. Funny story, friend's cat used to shove paper towels under their fridge. They didn't realize that, like, if it fell on the floor, like the cat was where it disappeared to. They just assumed that their housemate was, picking. Anyway, anytime the cat could get a hold of a balled up paper towel, they were shoving it under the fridge and causing a problem. So you might want to double check your grill on the back of your fridge periodically, vacuum back there, vacuum the back of your fan even, those types of things. It makes a lot of sense. Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency has low interest loans through the HELP program. That is correct. We also have the KEEP thing I talked about. You put the links in there.
Yep, I put the links for the KEEP program, which is a loan that you could access as a homeowner. Also included the overall link to this series. So if you have other questions, it's essentially a growing resource library, and you can also sign up for upcoming sessions. And then if folks are not already on the Penn Energy Savers list, the website's there. So that's the best way to get the information there. And then folks have also included various links to resources for local utilities. They also often have, as Heather said, different resources available through the Act 129 requirements.
Yeah, sorry. I also see in here the thermal camera comment. There's thermal imaging cameras, which, yes, they do run like $200. And you can get one that plugs into your phone, and they're very much fun. But if you don't want to drop $200 for something you're only going to use once, then I don't recommend getting it, unless you're a complete nerd, like me. But I'm talking about the thermal temperature gun things. There's different names for them. And I think somebody put an example of one in the chat for that too. And then another question was about solar installation would get them only about 65% efficiency. And because electric rates are going to be going up, because they are going up, unfortunately, and going up again next year, don't know that it's necessarily data center build out or AI and cryptocurrency, but it's just in general, there's more people are using energy more. It's just the way things are going. And when it comes to solar, I am not the expert on that. So I would suggest talking to, there's a couple different entities out there who can do a better job explaining whether solar is actually worth it for you or not. I know a handful of people who've completely gone off grid by adding solar to their house, and doing everything they can to be as energy efficient as possible. We often recommend that regardless of if you're going to do solar, if you're going to do some other renewable that you have out there in the world, step one is be as efficient as possible. If you can avoid using a hair dryer, don't use a hair dryer. If you can not use that leaf blower, don't use that leaf blower. Those types of things that you can do for your home and in your home where, it's manual labor rather than electric power, gas power, or propane power is the better option. You don't need an electric toothbrush, even though your dentist would like you to have one, maybe, unless you have real big problems. You just brush a little bit longer, that type of thing. So that's the first step before you take a look at investing in solar.
Yeah. So I realize we're out of time. I don't know that we addressed all of the questions, but clearly this is a topic that people are excited to learn more about. And so we might have to have Heather come back and share more insights or find other opportunities. Like I said, thank you again for participating in this month's Spotlight. Our next month spotlight is focused on maximizing your company's efficiency with industrial energy assessments. We're, as I said, likely to add a couple additional spotlights that are specifically focused on the clean energy tax credits and the different deadlines in terms of sunsetting, because there's a few different, of course, they didn't make it easy to understand. But there still are opportunities. Certainly go forward as quickly as possible if you want to take advantage of some of those. And if there are specific questions that didn't get answered, Heather, Sarah, and I all included our emails in the chat, and we look forward to talking with you all again soon.